Let's go on to topic number 2 for tonight. We used to call this immigration, and yes, it's an issue throughout the United States, and I've changed the topic. I don't call it immigration anymore. It's more called border security, and let me tell you why. As a physician, I've done voluntary surgery in Mexico recently, Bolivia, Kenya, and 4 weeks in Somalia where I had a grenade thrown at me. So I've got compassion, like many of you do, for people throughout the world. But as a trauma surgeon working in the United States, I've seen the ravages of illegal immigration that takes place on a daily basis from people that are being shot at, run over by cars, or stabbed. I'm seeing that on a daily basis, and I could tell you stories for hours. I don't want to tell you my stories because they're kind of gory. I'd like to tell you a story about a friend of mine. His name is Robert. Robert does IT for my medical company. Robert's mother-in-law was walking across the street one day. She was hit by a drunk driver, killed. The drunk driver was an illegal immigrant, skipped back over the border, and didn't serve 1 day in jail. I hope I'm not depressing you guys. There's hope here, by the way. More about the border. Felipe Calderon. Does anybody know who Felipe Calderon is? He's the president of Mexico. Felipe Calderon is losing the war on drugs. Here's some examples. When I operated in November, it was in a town called Jalpa, Mexico. Every store and every home had bars on the windows, first and second floor, because of the cartels. I operated with a 48-year-old Mexican surgeon, became a friend of mine. Every night, when he was supposed to take call for the hospital, he wouldn't because he was afraid his family was going to be kidnapped. The week I left, he flew to Canada looking for a job in Canada. There's a town called Tansataro. And Jim, if you think you've got problems running a town, think about this particular town. This guy, the mayor of the town has got 26,000 people called Tansataro. The cartels came in there and took out the mayor, the entire city council, the 60-member police force, and half the management of the city, all within a matter of days. It's now a lawless town. On our borders, Nogales, Mexico, where I just was at. Nogales, Mexico is in Arizona, not that far from here in the grand scheme of things. In the month of January, there were 40 executions from the cartels. How many people have been to Acapulco? A couple people? Last weekend in Acapulco, 30 executions. Their cartels are coming over the border. I've been to the border. There are parts of the border where there's a physical fence like Nogales. It's a good wall. But most of the border is a patchwork. Here's what's along the border. There's 2 problems. First problem is what the geographic area looks like. Parts of it are owned by the federal government. Parts of it by the Indian reservations who really don't want the Border Patrol there. Parts of it are private landowners, which I'm going to go see in 2 weeks, ranchers down there, who are being ravaged by illegals crossing every day. And parts of it are national parks. So it's a really difficult area to control. The other big problem is who's crossing the border. We've been talking about illegal immigration for years. That's one group. People coming over here looking for jobs. That's one group. Second group, the cartels that I mentioned already. The cartels are coming over. They're setting up shop, and they're wreaking havoc in the United States, especially the Southwest. The third group that's coming over are the felons. 25% of some of our state's prisons are clogged up by the Mexican felons that are illegal. And the fourth group, and the scariest of all, we probably have already had terrorists cross the border. Janet Napolitano's electric wall that she tried to put up, censored technology, great idea on paper, it failed. We, you and I, spent $1 billion on censored technology which did not work at all. In our campaign, what we are preaching here is a physical wall along the entire southern border, very similar to what the Israelis did. The Israelis put up a wall on parts of their border and stopped a lot of the suicide bombers coming across. So step number 1 in this particular topic is a physical wall along the southern border. Next topic, unemployment. I talked earlier today with a lot of people about unemployment. Anybody want to shout out what you think the unemployment rate in the United States is right now? I heard 10, I hear 18, I hear 20. In the papers, it's 10%-ish, 9.7, 10%. And it's supposed to be hanging out there for the rest of the year. If you add people that have part-time jobs who like to have full-time, or people that have given up, it's 17.3%. It's probably the worst since the Great Depression. If you look at the construction industry, and I talked to Mark and Joe about that tonight, it's 24.7% in the construction industry. It is predicted to hit 30% in construction before the year's out. Everybody, I'm sure, has been touched by this problem. I'll tell you a few of my stories. A friend of mine, who's a very good friend of mine named Scott, he is an X-ray technician, about my age. He's been doing this for 25 years, from Chicago. He lost his job last summer when a hospital shut down. That's kind of novel and new, hospital shutting down. He lost his job last summer. It took him more than 6 months and 200 resumes to find a job 100 miles away in Normal. He's now driving to Normal every night from Chicago to do his job. Another friend of mine who works with me at the hospital, her husband lost his job in construction and now drives to Las Vegas from Phoenix 5 days a week away from his family looking for construction work, can no longer find work. Here's another benchmark company that I like to talk about. It's called Microsemi. Microsemi is a company of 300 people. It's a boutique semiconductor producer. Next April 2011, they're going out of business, and their business is shifting to Malaysia. All 300 white-collar jobs are going out of business. For some of the older folks in the room, I bet you remember the U.S. steel industry used to be the major powerhouse in the world. Where do you think it ranks now? The U.S. steel industry actually produces 30% less steel, less than Japan, tiny little Japan. That's because we have more than 26 regulatory bodies imposing more than 5,600 regulations on the U.S. steel industry. What was the most mighty and powerful steel industry is now relegated to below Japan. Why are these things happening? The USA Today has had 2 good articles in the last month. One was on the textile industry loss. We've lost the bulk of our textile industry overseas, blue-collar jobs. And another one was on blue-collar jobs in small to medium-sized towns. The article is roughly paraphrases, or the title is something like Ghost Towns in the United States. So take a look at those 2 articles. It's a great benchmark why we're losing these jobs. What is our corporate tax rate? Anybody know what the corporate tax rate is in the United States right now? 35%. Close. 39.3%. Now, the corporate tax rate is a combination of the average state tax rate and the federal tax rate. That's 39.3%. Well, how does that rate anywhere else? It's the second highest amongst 30 democratic countries in the world. The only one higher is Japan at 39.5. Essentially, we've got one of the highest tax rates in the world. So what can we do about this? Well, there's a lot of different options out there, but the more practical I would offer out to you is 2. First is a significant reduction in the corporate tax rate. Second, reduction or elimination of stifling regulations like in the U.S. steel industry. If you look at the taxes, does it make sense to tax a company going out of business at 39.3%? What are you going to get? You're going to get 0 in taxes. Or to make more sense, to tax them at 20% and actually make some money. The concept of free trade is an outdated term in my mind. Because of free trade, we are losing job after job, blue collar and white collar overseas, like water going out of a sink. We need to think more in terms of equal trade. We have to compete with other countries on equal footing to stop the loss of jobs, create new jobs, and probably equally as important, bring back these blue and white collar jobs that Washington has so carelessly just lost.